Hi everybody, my name is Brian Nichols. I'm the owner of Nichols Combat Sports Management, also known as Nichols CSM. Today I wanted to explore and discuss from a MMA Manager's Perspective the newly announced fight between Dan Hooker and Edson Barboza. Firstly, I want to say is, wow, what a fight. It's going to be crazy. I love it. I can't wait. And secondly, I may or may not have to say this, but every fighter owns their career. They're the ones that, at the end of the day, decide whether to take a fight or not to take a fight. But in my opinion, I think it would be beneficial for that fighter to discuss amongst their circle of people, hopefully knowledgeable people, to see if it's a fight that they should accept or deny, or if it's on the other side of it, if they should offer to the UFC or whatever promotion they're in, and see if it's something that they should definitely offer, because you don't want to offer it and then the promotion say, yep, we'll give you that fight, and then say, well, never mind. So I wanted to go over the perspective of an MMA manager from each side for both Dan Hooker and Edson Barboza. So let's start with Dan Hooker. So let's say the fight was offered to Dan Hooker. Number one, holy crap. If you're the manager of Dan Hooker and the UFC came to you and said, hey, what about Edson Barboza? Number one, holy crap. That's a huge step up from Hooker's last couple fights, to go up and fight Edson Barboza. So number one, you'd probably be excited, being the manager, thinking, your fighter is going to be, is Barboza still like top 5, if not 6 or 7 in lightweight, and Hooker is possibly getting a chance to move up and fight one of them, at least top 5. So that's huge. You'd be excited. But then you got to also think, with whatever contract that Dan Hooker's on, is it worth the money? Is it one of those things where, and this is one thing I'm hoping to discuss in a whole different video, is discussing contracts and how contracts work and things like that. So is it one of those opportunities where you can discuss the contract, maybe renegotiate, get some better money? Because you're stepping up in the top 5, you're going to just be getting big fights right then. And if you win that, it's just going to be big fight after big fight. So be a good opportunity to redo your contract or kind of go from there. So would it be even, number one, is it even worth the money of your current contract? And or number two, could you possibly use this? If the UFC is coming to you and offering you the fight, they obviously think it'd be a good fight, or it's a good matchup, or that it makes sense. It's something that obviously they're wanting if they're offering you the fight. So you could almost use that as some kind of leverage and say, hey, work with me here, we'll accept the fight, but let's talk about this contract. So that's something I feel like I would have in the back of my mind as well if I was the manager for Dan Hooker. Next, obviously you'd have to go to Dan Hooker and say, hey, look, listen to this. We got offered Edson Barboza. And then I hope at that point Dan would, he's possibly excited or something like that. Maybe next step would be to talk to him and his team, like his coaches, maybe training partners, most likely probably coaches, and say, hey, Dan, or coach, am I ready for Edson Barboza? Like, obviously every fighter thinks they're ready for every fight, but sometimes you got to be logical. So I feel like that'd still be a good thing to say, hey, is this step up? Is this the correct step? Or should I go work on other things, work on other fights? So I feel like that'd be something to think about as well. And the last thing I wanted to mention about Dan Hooker and his management, the other thing is what if Hooker and his team were the ones that offered that fight to the UFC? Think about that. Like, if you already pre-discussed and said, yep, Edson Barboza is one we think would be a good fight, went to the UFC, said, hey, Dan Hooker versus Edson Barboza, let us know what you think. And obviously, again, you want to be confident. The fighter needs to be confident that, Because again, you don't want to go to the UFC, offer them that fight, and then when they come back, said, "Yep, okay, you got it, sign the contract," and you're like, "Well," so you want to be confident that that would be a good fight for you. Obviously, a step up. But holy crap, to actually offer that fight and then be given the fight by the UFC, obviously they did something correct, or they really think very highly of Dan Hooker and things like that. It could be a combination of everything. So either way, even if Dan Hooker, if he goes out there and wins, he's top 5, top 6. Like, it's just gonna be big fights after that. If he loses, I don't see that as a huge big deal, because I know he's really moving his way up. This could be just one step, another stepping stone in his journey, where maybe he takes a loss, learns from it, and then gets better and better. So I feel like, in my opinion, there's no win or lose for Dan Hooker. I feel like this is a win-win situation for him. So moving over to Edson Barboza and what his management probably went through is let's think as them for a second. What if Barboza got the fight offered to him and his management got offered the fight? What would your thoughts on that? If you think about it, Barboza, his last 2 fights, I'm going off of memory here, weren't the best. I think he lost both. Was it Kevin Lee and what was the other fight? Khabib. Yes, both wrestlers that took him down. Would you think maybe in the back of your mind those fights, and then think, okay, maybe Barboza needs to get another tune-up, maybe get his confidence back, get his swagger back, keep working on maybe some takedown defense, or maybe he's at the point where he's not going to learn any more of that. Is it worth that? But if it's a tune-up fight, it could help with those things. One other thing is, would it be worth the risk? What if Barboza loses? I feel like, so going back to Hooker, I feel like it's a win-win for him. For Barboza, I wouldn't say it's a lose-lose. I'd say it's a win-lose situation for him. If he wins, I feel like it's a good tune-up fight, gets his confidence back, kind of keeps his place in the rankings, that he's still something to mess with in the lightweight division. I know some people would call it a gatekeeper, but you never know. He could win this fight and start wrecking dudes again. So that could be the win. The lose is, getting completely replaced in the roster by Dan Hooker, losing his place and moving down the list. Is it worth that? Maybe Barboza's thinking about moving up to welterweight. I don't know. I doubt it. Granted, he's shredded, so maybe. But yeah, I feel like it's a win-lose situation for Barboza. And the other side of that is, did Barboza and his team offer that fight to the UFC? Again, I feel like the only reason they would go to the UFC, say, hey, we'll take Dan Hooker, would be because he's getting a little bit of hype. He's getting some good wins, and again, use it for a tune-up fight. And last thing I think I wanted to mention was this the only fight offered to Barboza, or did the UFC come to them and say, hey, here's two different fights, which one would you like? And then why would have Barboza's manager picked Dan Hooker? Did they see something in Hooker's game that they could exploit? Possibly. So I feel like there's a lot of things that not only the fighter themselves has to take an account for when accepting a fight or declining a fight or offering a fight to the promotion, but also on the management to think about, is it the right step for the fighter in their career? And because again, it's up to the fighter to decide at the end of the day. But if they're wanting to take in like information from the people around them, you make a knowledgeable decision on what to do with their career. Management could definitely help in those steps. I feel like that's what the managers are there for. They're there to offer advice to help the fighters in their career. So I feel like that's all the things that I feel both sides, management wise, would have to take in. So those are some of the things I kind of wanted to hash out myself. So thanks for watching. I think I'll be making another video here probably soon. I'm hoping to do, let's talk about a little bit of administrative stuff for my channel real quick. I was hoping to do a playlist for kind of like videos like this where I'm discussing. I have another video on my channel where I discuss attributes for successful MMA fighters, where basically if I'm trying to be a manager, when I'm trying to scout talent and things like that, what things do I need to account for attributes and things to look at in potential fighters and talent, to decide on whether if I'd like to reach out to them and see if they need management and things like that. So I have that plus this video. I feel like that would be kind of a good series or playlist on YouTube of basically how I would think, or what I think managers would go through, or what things they need to work on for their fighters. Basically exploring management perspective in MMA. I feel like that would be one interesting playlist and source of content on my channel. So I think that was going to be one. Another one was I was hoping to make videos of how my business is possibly growing and how it's doing. So I have 2 other videos on my channel where I discuss going over events and basically previewing the events, looking at fighters, looking at records, seeing who I'd be interested in, and then a post follow-up video of going over the fights and being like, okay, I definitely want to reach out to those fighters. I think that could be a separate playlist itself, doing local events, but I kind of want to have one word source of content of how my channel is going. For example, I could make a separate video of what, like, list of things that I want to work on for this business and what things I think that would better me to better the fighters that I manage down the line. So, but anyways, I think we're about 12 minutes in, so I'll wrap up the video here. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, and if anything, watch the fights this weekend, and have a good one.